everybody, and as always, I want to welcome you guys back to the shop. I'm sure a lot of you guys have noticed, but I haven't put any new content up in the last couple of months, and to be fair, there's a really good reason for that. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but I do have some very exciting news that I'm going to release here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks. But as you can see, today I am going to try to work on Kevin's C-10 on this chassis. I'm going to try to get this thing back as a roller. Right now the body is at my buddy's shop. Chris is he's doing all the body work on it, and the progress is going pretty good. For the most part, you know, the body process is usually pretty slow, but I basically have quite a bit of older footage, and that's what I'm going to end up letting you guys watch today. I've got some older footage as I'm building the rear end actually on this truck, and what I don't mention a whole lot on the actual footage is how much I fought that rear end. That thing, it fought me tooth and toenail, and I finally was able to get that thing together. So anyway, as you guys are watching that video, I think I'm going to film out some more stuff, and hopefully I can get this thing built out into a chassis. So anyway, I hope you guys enjoy, and as I always say, I want to thank you guys for tuning in, and thank you for the support, and hopefully you enjoy what I've put together, and we'll see you on the next one. Got to look good for all you YouTube fans. I think there's like 12 of you all out there, but I love you. Okay, since we are replacing all of the brakes on Kevin's truck, we've got brand new drilled and slotted rotors here. And with that, I've ordered brand new wheel bearings, and they come as pairs with the bearing and the race. They come as pairs, so I'm gonna drive, the new rotors actually came with new races. However, I'm gonna drive these races out of these new rotors, and I'm gonna use the stuff that I bought. Then we're gonna end up packing these bearings, and luckily I don't have to do it the old fashioned way where you put a glob of grease in your palm and you just sit here and you run that bearing in there and get that stuff all packed in there. I've got this handy tool here that will throw these bearings into, and I can use a grease gun. Then once they're packed, then I'll fill the inside cavity of this full of grease, and we'll get these things installed, and that will be one more step closer to making that chassis a roller. Okay, another component that I have to put together, basically these rear leaf springs. We bought a brand new set, and when these things came in, they had some really heavy clear that was just over the bare metal. So didn't want to take a chance on these things rusting out down the road. So I stripped these things apart, sent them down, had them sandblasted. Then as you saw in some time lapse in an earlier video, I went ahead and slapped a nice set of paint on these things. So anyway, I'm going to build these out, and that'll be another step in the direction of making that chassis behind me a roller. Okay, now that I've got a few of the sub assemblies basically assembled, we got the rotors laying here. I've got the rear springs in the back. I think I'm gonna go ahead and mount a few components, and I'll go over this side and talk a little bit about what we're going to do over here. It's pretty straightforward, with the exception of I've got a shock bracket, reinforcement bracket that we've have to drill some holes and stuff in and basically get that mounted. But over here, it's pretty much just going to be plug and play. We'll do this side and then I will, it's just basically ×2 whenever I get to the other side. So anyway, first thing we're going to do is I may try to sit down and get a little more comfortable, but I do have new dust shields, and that will be the first component that will be put on. Those are on. I wasn't sure if I was going to need both flat washer and lock washer. Now that those are on, you guys saw me earlier. I replaced the races in these rotors, and then I went ahead and packaged wheel bearings. So additionally, I fill this cavity as full of grease as that I can get it, and then I reinstalled the new seal. It's pretty straightforward. These are just going to go on. And once I get these things adjusted and tight, the dust cap that goes on here, I typically like to fill it full of grease as well. So anyway, this lock washer, this washer is keyed to the spindle. And then we're going to put the wheel nut on. Tighten it up a little bit snug. That actually doesn't feel too bad if you're looking at new wheel bearings. We'll end up, after we run this thing down the road a little bit, I'll end up readjusting these, but I think I'm going to let that fly. And once we're there, I usually put the cotter pin in. Okay, now that I've got the rotor on, the next thing I'm going to do, or I was going to do, I went ahead and I got the shock stud bolted into the chassis. And I was talking about these brackets earlier. These are reinforcement brackets, and they're designed to go over that stud, and then you drill new holes into the frame and they help support that. But when I got to looking at these don't look like, they don't fit the right angle. So for now, I'm just gonna throw the shock on here, and we're gonna throw the bolts into it, and I will double check to make sure I got the right components. So now the last component that I'm going to hang on this side before I repeat the process over there is the calipers. And as you can see, I took these calipers down and I had them powder coated to match the truck. So these are pretty straightforward if you've ever most people put brakes on a car before, but I went ahead and I've got some brake stop applied to the back of these, and off camera, of course, I put this on about, I don't know, about 10-12 minutes ago. So let it get tacky. And once it gets to that point, then we're ready to install. So cool. I'll tighten those up, and then I think I'll do a little time lapse and I'll jump over to the other side. So we'll see you in just a bit. One of the other components that I need to build out is part of the fuel system, which I have also on the table in front of me. As you can see, I've got the new fuel tank, and behind me is laying all the components to make this thing fuel injection. So this is pretty much a complete kit that you buy from Tanks Incorporated. I've used a few of these on other vehicles. I've probably installed about a half a dozen of these, and they're a great kit because they bolt right into the factory vehicle. And they not only do they have a location for a factory style sending unit, they also have the adapter here that's going to hold the fuel pump and the fuel assemblies. So for the most part, if you need to, their instructions also come with it, but most of us, we just toss these in the trash. So these are pretty straightforward. This assembly right here is what holds the fuel pump. And you're pretty much going to cut the black line, but you're going to want to measure from the bottom of the tank to the top of this flange. And then you're going to want to set that up to where your little filter assembly is just slightly off the bottom of the tank. The only other critical part about this is this white one is your return. And you want to angle cut this pretty close to the bottom of the suction side of this pump. Additionally, it comes with wiring. It snaps in here. It's got a couple of fittings that it pulls out up here, and then you can wire it accordingly once you have this thing in the vehicle. Another nice thing about this sending, the fuel pump top, I guess you'd call this the fuel pump adapter, is they have one, you've got a vent, which this kit also comes with a vent assembly that you mount up higher than the fuel neck. Second, as you look here, hopefully you can see it, but this is stamped with an R and an S, and of course that's return and supply. So whenever you start running your fuel lines and you kind of forget which side of the fuel pump that you're supplying returns on, it's pretty well straightforward. So anyway, I'm gonna build this out. The other component that these come with is a factory style sending unit. I do believe these are a 90 ohm sending unit, which for the most part, most of your older vehicles, they are 0 to 90, which 0 is empty and 90 is full. They also come with this float assembly, so you pretty much have to adjust all of this to where it works within the height, the level of your tank. And I've set a few of these up. These are pretty straightforward. It just takes a little bit to get to where you have full empty and full once you get this thing mounted in the tank. So anyway, I know that's a lot of information, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna get all of this stuff assembled, and then once the tank and stuff is on, then I think we'll look at the hanging it onto the chassis, and we'll move on to the rear end. Okay, there's the fuel pump assembly, and basically on the tank, when I measured from the bottom of the tank to this flange, I was about 10 3/8. So as you can see, if we check from the top of this down to about the sock of the filter, I'm about 1/8 of an inch off the tank, which is acceptable. So the next thing you guys saw, I put a little bit of heat on this to get this line on there, because that is a pretty tight fit. The next thing, as you can see, is the lines go up, the wires go up through those ferrules, and you can snug those down to kind of help seal the fuel. So anyway, I think I've got this thing ready to go in, so I'll install this, and then we'll see what we can do with the sending unit. Okay, as you can tell, one, by the change of clothes that I've got on, and two, the rear end still is not hung in the truck. Basically, I went to put the rear end in, and when I went to put the leaf springs in, I noticed that I had the wrong set of leaf springs. And unfortunately, I didn't pre-fit the springs to the chassis. I automatically took it for granted that they were gonna fit, and they didn't. So unfortunately, with that being said, this is a good time to basically give you a little bit of a pointer. If you buy parts like that, be sure to pre-fit those before you put them on your project. The reason being is I went ahead and I took those springs apart, I sandblasted them, and then as you guys saw in this video or a previous video, I painted those things. Well, the company I bought those things from, they wouldn't take them back since I painted them. So I'm pretty much gonna have to eat a set of leaf springs and find something else to use them on. So anyway, I got the new ones in. I've got them broken apart. Of course, I did test them. I measured them out against the old ones, and they will fit. So I think I'm gonna jump around over here. Like I said, I got the leaf springs down at the sandblaster. I'm just gonna have them re-sandblast them, then I'll spray them, and then we'll go ahead and finish mounting up the rear end. But I think I'm gonna jump up here and go ahead and get the fuel tank installed. You guys saw me build out the sending unit and the pump assembly. So now I'm gonna go ahead and hang the brackets, and we're gonna get the fuel system bolted in. So if you guys will remember, I built these brackets out quite some time back. Basically, I took these apart, replaced the straps, and welded them back in, put them back together, and repainted these things. So anyway, I ordered this anti-squeak material, and I thought this was gonna be rubberized, and it turns out for the most part, it's just tar paper. And I've got pieces trimmed in, and I have those glued in where the tank and the brackets, it's metal to metal contact. It's kind of an anti-squeak as well. So I've got these prepped and ready, got these glued in. So now I'm gonna get these brackets hung on here, and then I'm gonna continue to mount the fuel tank. And we'll figure out what else that we can go ahead and bolt onto this thing while we're waiting on the springs. So I'll get set up, and that's what we're gonna do next. Now that I have the fuel tank mounted, the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get the cross member bolted into this thing. So if you guys will remember also, I reinforced this cross member. So today I'm gonna go ahead and get it bolted in. I've got the new cross member basically the new mount, and we're gonna get these things bolted into place. With the transmission bolted somewhat into place and the fuel tank installed, I think now I'm going to build out the steering for this truck. So for the most part, everything on this front steering I have replaced. I bought new inner and outer tie rod ends, the pitman arm, the idler arm. Everything is brand new. I already set up the distance between the inner and the outer. I've got a preliminary setting on those. The only thing that I'm reusing on the front steering, for the most part, is the center link and the original steering box. Now, the steering box, whenever we had the truck in here running, it did not have any leaks and it worked well. So I think for now, I just basically cleaned it up and put a fresh coat of paint on it, and we'll hang it, and then I'm gonna start building out the steering. So Okay, I got all the steering components installed. I've got all the nuts finger tight. So now it's just a matter of getting everything tight, and a lot of these things, there's a cotter pin hole that you have to line up, and I'll get the cotter pins installed, and then there's some of these that aren't greasable and some of them are. So I'll go through and I'll install all the grease zerks where they need to be and make sure everything is completely tightened up on the front steering. So after that, I've got a couple of things that we're gonna be able to do, but the guy down at the sandblaster called and said my springs are ready, so I think I'm gonna run down and get those and get them prepped and maybe get those painted this evening. So anyway, I'm gonna do this and we'll be back shortly. Okay, I'm somewhat at a standstill with the chassis up front. And as you can see behind me, I've got the new leaf springs laid out, and I've got some etching primer on those and letting that dry. So I'll spray those before I leave tonight. That way when I come in here tomorrow, they'll be nice and dry. We can get those put together, hopefully get the rear end built out. So in the meantime, one more thing I'm gonna do is, as you can see, I've got this absolutely gorgeous set of headers here. These are Hooker headers that are gonna go on Kevin's truck. And as you can see, they're silver ceramic coated. Beautiful header, beautiful header. However, I'm not a big fan of this open collector end and how they make this design to where your exhaust pipe slides over or goes inside this, and then you use some band style clamps. Not a fan of that. So what I'm gonna do is I've replaced and install V-bands at the end of this header. And basically what I'll end up doing is I'll have to cut this ceramic coating off here, and this V-band is pretty much like it is. They're shaped as a V right here, and as you clamp these together, it squeezes the force together and holds them tight. So there's only one somewhat little bit of a trick on these, and I really feel like this is somewhat important, but the way that these installed, if you can see, this has got a chamfer ring. There's a male and a female, and those mate together and help center that up. I also feel like I always install the one with the male basically pointing in the direction of the flow. So anyway, I'm gonna get this thing set up and see if I can cut this coating off of here just a little bit so we can TIG these on, and then we'll go bolt them into the truck. Okay, so that pretty much is gonna wrap that up for tonight. So I got those things, got them bolted on and snugged them down. I put some anti-seize on the bolts. That way, if you guys saw in one of my other videos, the head bolts, or excuse me, the exhaust manifold bolts are bad to break off and snap into these heads. So I always try to put anti-seize on aluminum to whatever bolt, especially if you're using a stainless bolt, which these aren't. So these are just a nickel plated bolt. So anyway, got the headers bolted on. So I think for today, I'm gonna finish out the day. I'm not gonna film it, but I'm gonna go back there in the back and I'm gonna go ahead and just paint those other springs that are in the back. So that way they have a chance to dry overnight. And then tomorrow, hopefully we can build out the rest of the rear suspension and get this thing setting back on all 4 tires. So anyway, I'm gonna do that. You guys have a great evening and I'll see you tomorrow. All right, it's a brand new day. Managed to get those springs all painted last night, so they should be good and dry. I've got just a couple of small pieces that I gotta throw in the bead blaster and put a little bit of paint on those. I'm gonna slip these together and then I'm gonna take them up front and we'll see if we can get these things installed on that chassis. Okay, I wanna catch everybody up real quick, just in case you haven't seen some of the older videos on this build, but we did C-notch the frame, and we also are planning on doing what is called a flip kit. It's made by Beltec, nothing fancy. They aren't very expensive, but basically it puts the rear end on top of the leaf springs instead of having it mounted underneath. So typically I say throw the instructions in the trash and wing it. However, unless you've installed these before, I definitely would skim through the instructions because there is a couple of things. One, this is the bracket that your rear end's now gonna sit on, and if you notice, the bolt hole, instead of being in the center of the axle, is now offset to the front. And if you don't read the instructions, you're gonna sit here and you're gonna mount this up, you're gonna be questioning yourself as to why this hole is offset. So anyway, instructions say that goes to the front of the truck. Same way with the, basically your U-bolt clamp plate. Okay, that pretty much is going to have the install of the rear end complete. So want to explain one thing real quick. I told you guys about these spacers and they're offset. And the reason why they're offset is if you look at this spring perch, the springs are actually, they're cocked up in the rear. The center of this, the rear end perch is designed to fit underneath the spring. So what happens is if you look at this spring from this angle, the bolt is actually going up at an angle. So what that does, that basically, if you were to just bolt that rear end up on top, it moves your rear end forward. So the offset on that bracket actually is designed to slide that rear end back so the center line stays original to where it used to be when it was mounted under here. I wanted to throw that out there real quick because it took me a little bit to understand. And in fact, I had to ask a buddy of mine that has installed some of these before. But once you kind of bolt it together, you'll see how this actually offset is designed to work. So for the most part, I cut the bolts off. They were way too long. I cut over 1.5 inches off these U-bolts. I still need to torque them down. I need to, once I get the body, it's a little bit more weight, I'll probably torque the shackle bolts down as well. So that I think is going to get very close to having this back to a roller. I'm going to clean up the axles and slide those in, put the C-clips in and get the pin into the differential, and probably go ahead and hang the wheels for now. And I'll probably, depending on how long this video is, I may go ahead and build out the rear brakes. If not, then I'm probably going to stop this video here and we'll start another one. Probably the next thing you're going to see is we're going to have to mount the cab and bolt the front clip back on this thing. So we got to do some pre-fitting. The body's getting very, very close to being ready. So anyway, if depending on where the editing goes on this one, I want to tell you guys, as I always do, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. I appreciate the kind comments and stuff, and let's keep this thing rolling. And as always, I'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for watching. Okay, I want to let that truck go by. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna let that truck go by real quick. Whoop, there goes the car, so we gotta wait. Okay, I want to catch everybody up. We'll cut that out as a blooper.